Hello, friends, and welcome to this midweek devotion. It's good to be with you again. Let me ask you a question. What is the one thing that you are looking forward to when all of this COVID business is in the rearview mirror of our lives and life can return back to some sense of normalcy? Let me tell you what I long for and why I long for that. I long for the day when we can gather together in the sanctuary and with full-throated voices sing the praises of God. And perhaps you can guess why I long for that day. I love to sing, but I also love to be with God's people and sing within the community of God's people. But there's another reason why that longing is in my heart, particularly today. And let me tell you what I experienced both yesterday and today. I went outside of the church, and from the peak of the church sanctuary was a cardinal singing with full-throated voice, singing its cardinal song to its mate, who was just a few trees away. And then again today, on a walk that I took through the cities of Guelph, I passed a pond, and from that pond again, the bullfrogs were singing with full-throated voices. They were singing in their way the praises of God. Now, I'm no poet, and so I lean on poetry when it comes to these moments of longing, these moments where I experience a sense of God's presence, his beauty and his goodness that I want to sing about. And there's a psalm in Psalm 19 that sings, literally sings for the glory of God, and a song of thanksgiving. The heavens are telling the glory of God, and the firmament proclaim his praise. Day after day they pour forth speech, and night after night they declare his knowledge. There is no speech, nor are there words. Their voice is not heard. Yet their voice goes out through all of the earth, and their words to the ends of the world. Of course, as we look at God's handiwork in creation, we see the beauty and wonder, the delight of God in creation. And so when the authors of the Belgic Confession wanted to systematize this into some sort of theology, they asked the question, how does God speak? And they answer that question by saying, we know God by two means. First, by creation, preservation, and government of the universe. Since the universe is open before us like a beautiful book in which all creatures, great and small, are as letters to make us ponder, to make us consider the invisible things of God, God's eternal power and divinity. Come to think of it, that systematic theology isn't so very cold at all. It speaks of beautiful things. All creatures, great and small, are as letters for us to ponder God's majesty, the things, the invisible things of God, where God is at work. We go back to that psalm and we think about the circumstances that contributed to that psalm of David. That psalm as he was written as he perhaps was tending those flocks and looked out at the expanse of the sky, as he looked at the constellation of the stars and began to write. The heavens are telling the glory of God, and the firmament proclaim his handiwork. Day after day, they pour forth speech. They are speaking about the things of God. And are we listening? Are our ears open to God's speech in creation? Are we wondering and returning our wondering into acts of praise and worship? And we consider all of the ways that God speaks in this world. He speaks in the beauty of a flower. He speaks in the evening sky with all of its hundreds of thousands of stars. He speaks in the crashing of waves on the seashore. He speaks in the order of creation, which is predictable, so predictable. We can build our lives upon it. We can order our lives. God speaks in the beautiful design of grasshoppers that look like leaves, that are can hide themselves from their enemies, God speaks in the wail. Of course, we are reminded that God speaks in creation. And as we enter into a long weekend where the beginning of summer, or where summer begins, we look around. We look at the cherry tree in full blossom. We look at the pine tree that is literally bursting with life. If you flicked one of those cones like I did this past week, again on one of my walks, pollen would burst forth from that pine tree. And again, we are reminded of God's abundant goodness given to us in this creation, in this world that He has placed us in this world where we get to experience the fullness and the abundance of God's grace and goodness in His world. Thanks for listening, and I hope and pray that you have a great weekend. My wife and I are going to go out of town, and we're going to enjoy one another and enjoy God's creation by sitting at a lake. And I'll be thinking of you. I'm going to be delivering the sermon a little early this week. But we will see you again then on Sunday together at our weekly gathering. Good to see you. Thanks for listening, and we will see you again next week. May the Lord bless you and keep you. May the Lord make His face to shine upon you. May He lift up His face towards you. And may you experience His abundant goodness.